Okay, hi, me again. Sorry, it's been a minute. How are you? How's your day going? So I'm going over chapter 3 and the Intermediate's Guide of the Mystery Sciences. It's called Shadow Work, chapter 3. Shadow work gets a bad reputation from those ignorant of its true meaning. Our historical record shapes our understanding of terms such as this. Shadows have inherently reminded us of the unknown, and our myths and traditions have shaped our fear of what the shadows may hold. Words associated with shadow include lurking, hiding, and darkness. Shadows have been demonized to our psyche since before we were born. The Mystery Science Intermediate student must dissolve these implanted ideas and decide for themselves what idea is being expressed by this word. What is the essence at the heart of this sigil? Shadow is an English tradition of a Greek word, skaya or shade, in the sense that shade is a protective aspect of the darkness in light. Shade may, in fact, be the whole motivation behind the densification of thought forms into materiality, as that is what is required to provide shade. The people reading the word shadow in the present do not see with the eyes of those who invented it. They do not receive the same intention of the ones who created this sigil. This sigil loses its power as its true meaning fades into memory. To truly make use of shadow work, you must first define the shadow. Merriam-Webster defines the word shadow as the dark figure cast upon a surface by a body intercepting the rays from a source of light. If that's too vague for you, there's a second definition to supplement. Partial darkness or obscurity within a part of space from which rays of a source of light are cut off by an interposed opaque body. Let's start unpacking there. In the Emerald Tablets, Thoth said something about dark figures, which comes to mind when he was recalling the moment he received his freedom from samsara and faced the dark death of the halls of Amenti. And then this quote: "Before me arose a great throne of darkness. Veiled on it seated a figure of night. Darker than darkness sat the great figure, dark with the darkness, not of the night. Before it then paused the master, speaking the word that brings about life, saying, O master of darkness, guide of the way from life unto life. Before thee I bring a son of the morning. Touch him not ever with the power of night. Call not his flame to the darkness of night. Know him and see him, one of our brothers, lifted from darkness into the light. Release thou his flame from its bondage. Free let it flame through the darkness of night." So Thoth's dark figure was scary but reasonable. They literally reasoned with it. It was also throne-worthy, so there must have been some legitimate authority there. Then there's a differentiation between darkness and darkness of the night. Apparently, darkness has a spectrum. Darkness, not of the night, suggests that it somehow predates the night, but then comes the confusion because the figure itself is described as being both master of darkness and a figure of night. It can be interpreted many ways, but I always considered it an avatar for primeval forces of refolding or death, original shadow. The Latin root for the idea of shadow is umbra. Umbra is the cosmological term for this idea. When shade is applied to the macrocosm, it takes on a different feeling. It's more about angles and orbits at that point. When there's a lunar eclipse, the Earth casts a shadow upon the moon. When there's a solar eclipse, the moon casts a shadow onto the Earth. The Sanskrit word for the idea of shadow is shaya, which we recall from Madame Blavatsky's timeless efforts are the first root race of mankind. These are the ancestral archetypal ideas which comprise the firstborn thought forms in the beginning of this universe. In Egypt, they called these energies the Agduad. In Viking lore, there are the elves, dwarves, giants, and gods. These are the primordial bodies of what would manifest and evolve in physicality. Not dense enough to create shade, but powerful enough to evolve into that which will. In direct contact with the first cause, and yet too far removed from the physical end of the spectrum to have a solo adventure there. It is the shadow that fills the space where else would only be light. But why? Why would light want something in its way? Why would light seek to compare itself to its opposite? But oh, therein lies the curious nature of consciousness. And light, first and foremost, is conscious. And consciousness seeks more. Just more. More of itself in expression, all of the various possibilities of expression. Every ray of light is potentially an individual expression of the source from which it radiates. Shadows are a byproduct of the casting of idea from light. Much like music is a byproduct of the separation of frequencies, the conscious mind enters the realm of separated expressions of light in concentrated forms and cannot resist the impulse to fill the air with the music of desired possibilities. In the ancient texts of many cultures around the planet, you will read of a group of light beings with various titles. In the Emerald Tablets, they are called the Children of Light and are differentiated from the Children of Men early on. Here we experience Thoth's subtle description of the mission of the energies behind the idea of shade. Far in a past time, lost in a space-time, the Children of Light looked down on the world, seeing the children of men in their bondage, bound by the force that came from beyond. Knew they that only by freedom from bondage could man ever rise from earth to the sun. In the higher dimensions, the consciousness that will evolve into, through, and beyond us is not yet broken into so many pieces. The multiplicity happens as dimensions get further from source. This we know as fractalization. But before fractalization is necessary, there is unity. The children of light are as close to unity of light as the children of men are to the separation of light. Our visible light spectrum does not include unity of light, only separated frequencies of light. Our auditory, kinetic, and olfactory senses share this limitation. But somewhere, in some dimension where unified light is perceptible to the bodies interactive there, our same consciousness is working to grow and expand as we do in our physical bodies. Their work feeds and is fed by ours, and we are like a network of several individually calibrated beehives working separately and collectively for the same goal. Another way to see it would be to compare it to strings on an instrument, separate but in harmony. Carl Jung explained the shadow as a dimension subconsciously hidden due to shame, forgetfulness, repression, or fear. It was a psychological aspect of the unconscious mind, which held our repressed desires and darkest fears. As one of his main 4 archetypes of the psyche, the shadow seemed to have the most intimidating description. Jung gave a quick description of it in 1945 when he said it was the thing a person has no wish to be. So, shadow work, it sounds scary, and it's, everybody talks about it like Dark Night of the Soul, and it's, yeah, it starts with Dark Night of the Soul, but that's not on purpose. It's not on purpose. You just kind of fall into that hole, and you're like, fuck, this is my life now. But yeah, anyway, shadow work is essentially just psychology, alchemy. It's all the same. It is overcoming fear, essentially. Because fear limits you, weighs you down. And it's a mental universe, and you're creating every moment. And if you're creating moments of fear, it's gonna suck a lot. Your whole life is gonna suck all the time in every area. But yeah. So what I'm gonna use to explain shadow work now is this book, Richard Rudd's Gene Keys. Okay. And I love this book. All I'm saying, I love this book. I love everything about the intention. The energy is great. It's knowledgeable, it's sciencey, it's spiritual, it's romantic. I love it. It hits all my buttons. It's a pleasure to read and study. Take notes. I have to take lots of notes while I read it. Oh yeah, I'm breaking it down. I'm adding shit that you forgot. It's cool. I'm gonna make a whole chart, witch's guide. I got you. But yeah, so I introduced the Gene Keys because I'm obsessed with it, and it's everything sciencey, nerdy, spiritual. Love it. Okay, I'm going to stop and I'm just going to read. Gene keys. Richard Rudd's biological pathway through evolution and into ascension of consciousness, utilizing the human genetic amino acid sequencing and the Chinese divination of the I Ching. Yeah, I know, it's a working title. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry you had to do that. Thank you for that. In the long ago, but not so far away, there was once a system of divination, and one could argue individuation, known to the Eastern philosophical mind as the I Ching, or the Book of Changes. It's a system of categorization for the genetically inherited human archetypes of the spirit, soul, and mind as they are ever in movement, changing and evolving through choices and pattern recognition. Richard Rudd takes these archetypes of change and overlays them onto the genetic code of the human being, matching each expression to its fundamental amino acid as a biological medium for expressive quality within the human body. His idea is that, quotes, the body emits a range of subtle bioelectric energy signatures, which, taken together, form a powerful electromagnetic field known as the aura. Quote, he then takes it a step further to break down the genetic sequencing of the archetypes into three main vibrational frequency wavelengths. The lowest and most basic frequency is categorized as the shadow frequency. The higher level of awareness is the gift frequency. The highest level of awareness is the siddhi frequency. And its power is that as you achieve this level of awareness, you destroy all paths you took to get there. The contemplation of these three levels of each archetype is the activation sequence for the shadow work in the most beautiful manner of unifying Eastern and Western logos. Shadow work has never been so easy. Through the Gene Keys system of contemplation and understanding, you learn step by step where you're going and where you've been. You learn that the past is alive in the future and that the present is the only place you can learn from either. And you learn something magical about yourself, that you are in control of all of it. Let's start with the I Ching. Okay, and this is just me trying to break down the I Ching, and I'm sorry this happened. But you have to get, it's important. It's important. Okay, start with the I Ching. Firstly, it's a binary system of positive and negative symbols, like ones and zeros. The ones are the unbroken horizontal lines. Each line is called a yao, representing the ideas of positive, masculine, spirit, light, etc. And the zeros are broken lines, broken horizontal lines, representing the ideas of feminine, receptive, cold, deep, soul, etc. So there's the masculine and the feminine energies to begin with. It's a binary system. It's a binary code. Secondly, the binary code is arranged in sequences of three. Three lines together make the trigram. The three lines have important placement value as well. The top line represents above or heaven. The middle line represents below or earthly plane. And the bottom line represents man. Each trigram describes an idea of change. Change is more than movement. It is movement for a purpose. It is encoded programming. Movement has to express itself according to the laws of space-time and the material it moves through. In the same way, a program must adhere to its primary directives. And then there's imagery and a little chart. So there's 8 trigrams, and it's just the 1 and 0 broken and unbroken lines in stacks of 3. And when you have the pattern of different stacks in different pattern order, it gives you a different element. Heaven, earth, thunder, water, wind, fire, mountain, lake. Those are the 8 trigrams. And they represent, these are ideas, heaven is active, creative, and earth is receptive and abysmal. Thunder is arousing, water is flowing, wind is seeking, fire is igniting, mountain is chilling, lake is cruising. But yeah, these are ideas. And the Chinese knew better than to try and put too many words to ideas, Picture is enough. So lake, in the trigram system is a vibe. It's a whole vibe. Thunder, it's a whole vibe. And in the West, we personified these ideas, Aries, Thor, gave them very human-like qualities and shit. But Eastern philosophy never would limit it in that way. It was intangible and didn't need a form. It was an idea, it was more of an idea. And it was like ancestral, Okay, thirdly, each trigram is then stacked onto another trigram in order to express the duality of consciousness and subconscious mind at play within each changing movement of the spirit through the mindscape. The trigram on the top represents the above, or the inner, and the trigram on the bottom represents the below, or the outer expression of movement. This dual symbol is called a hexagram. With 8 trigrams, we have 64 possible arrangements of dual expressions. Each hexagram describes an ancient archetype that is a frequency of the whole unified spirit. A rousing thunder in the above, when in conjunction with the still mountain holding firm below, can reflect in itself in any of the great muses of Greek mythology. In the body, the expressions of these ideas are attitudes, talents, charisma, and interests. Fourthly, the hexagram, having 2 parts, one movement of within and one expressed without, each made up of 3 parts derived from the ones and zeros lines of positive and negative movement, claims for itself a piece of the genetic code, which is also comprised of 3 pieces of expression found within the DNA of the human body. I realize what a disaster that sentence is. Yeah, that was one sentence, and I'm so sorry that happened, and I'm working on it. It's just, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm a pack rat. Anyway, I'm sorry for that sentence. These expressions of code are called codons, and each expresses an amino acid which activates the synthesis of a particular protein, which then extends itself into the outer world as a small piece of the human body, aura, and experience. If ever there was a time or place to implement change, it would be here, where new life is born into the old environment. Okay, now let's get into this amino acid situation. What is an amino acid, and why would they be claimed by ancient mystical symbols representing evolutionary changes of movement? There are 22 protein-generating amino acids in the human body, which pretty much handle the body's maintenance for us. All of the automated functions of the body that we don't ever have to intentionally worry about, like immune response and DNA translation, are a chemical reaction, transmutation, programmed into our cells from conception. They start out as an idea in the nucleus of each cell. The DNA sleeps in there and dreams of what could be. The membrane acts as an auric field for the cell and electromagnetically resonates the frequency of each code's potential expression. Water, salt, sugar, and other mineral components of the first dimensional consciousness are a perfect medium for such data. We are light, after all. Somehow this idea escapes the womb of the nucleus and copies itself onto messenger RNA, which is a single strand of code from the double helix DNA that produced it. A shade, if you will. This train-hopping freeloader, radiating with its own electromagnetic field, is a few letters in a sentence, in a paragraph, in an essay, in a 13 billion book series that only a translator can read. The mRNA must now be translated so that it can be prepared for life and sent out on its own to make its fortune. Anticodons, or transfer RNA, are the soulmates of each codon. Polarity is alive and well in the microcosmic magic of automated chemical change. The movement of mRNA through the translator would never happen if the transfer codon made specifically for that line of code didn't stalk and kidnap it out of love, because they belong together. So the tRNA gets sticky with the messenger RNA, and they head over to the translator with an armed escort, shotgun wedding style. The translator is called ribosome, and he is a savage workaholic. This guy binds to the mRNA and translates its sequence of data to determine what sequence of amino acids is required to produce what protein. Once the protein is produced, it then folds to let the universe know it is ready to be three-dimensional. Look out, world, we have protein. These proteins then go to college, where they get a lifetime of debt, 2 baby mamas, a nasty divorce, and a receding hairline. Okay, and then there's it says that let's meet these amino acids, born of the idea which survived the kidnapping and translation process, only to discover that the journey was about more than suffering, it was about growth. And there's a chart, a chart that you can see. And then it says, well, nice to meet you, random chart of 21 amino acids. Thanks for being in picture format and assuming that we know what side chains are. And then in parentheses it says, it's what it sounds like, a sidekick that follows the amino acid around, creating salt bridges and networking PR for the views. So, why are they important to spiritual progression? Through the ancient Chinese archetypal individuation system hidden within the human genetic sequences. I'm so glad you asked. The gene key system encourages the student to explore the many directions of their own movement in order to dissolve any misconceptions about whether or not they have the agency to move at all. Is there room for free will in a world of cause and effect? If the genetic predisposition to addiction is inherited, can the recipient be held accountable for playing the expected role? If our ancient ancestors are responsible for our current instincts and evolutionary progress, should we feel somehow separated from them by changing these habits? All of these questions are answered without being directly addressed in the gene keys system. This is the way of shadow work. The biological influence of the body on the soul and mind are as equally as powerful as the psychological influence of the mind on the body and soul, and the emotional influence of the soul on the body and mind. Another three-cornered pathway reveals itself. The amino acid proteins created by the body carry the data of the past and the potential of the future. Each present moment is a chance to create the future and honor the past. The biological auric frequency of attitude and emotional disposition are imprinted on each new protein as it is created. So you can literally create each cell in your body with the residue of your emotional damage or the optimism of your emotional pleasure. This is where free will exists, in the body's automated programming. How? Great question. Cymatics shows us how sound takes form. Sound is just vibration we cannot see. That is, unless its movement affects something we can see, like the spirit moving the body. Then we can visualize the movement of vibration. The evolution of the spirit, the growth of the soul, and the data processing of the mind are all aspects of movement that we can only see via their effects or changes. This is the way of nature. The Eastern philosophers knew that to see heaven in a wild flower, we would have to look beyond the flower itself. We would have to look at the entire ecosystem. Only when we can see the vastness of the field in which it grows, the complete root system it is electrically communicating with, and the generations of future flowers that spring from the one, will we begin to understand how heaven is in every wildflower, even us. Okay, remember when I said that the gene keys was a system of categorization of archetypes? That was random, I know, but it was important. The great archetypes of all time exist within us. The goddess of love, the demon of gluttony, the trickster, the hero, the fool, and the villain are all aspects of our own light, within a very wide spectrum of light. Shadow work, or individuation, is not simply dealing with your multiple personality disorder. It is conquering yourself in order to save yourself from yourself through realization by degrees that there is no self. Yeah, it's a nightmare. First, you have to figure out who you are not. Awareness level, identifying with the ego. Then you have to figure out how the environment brings not you out in you. Awareness level, separating your authentic frequency from the learned behavior of reactive ego. Then you have to admit that the not you actually is you. Awareness level, accountability for the development and expression of the ego. But eventually, you let go of all the things and ideas you've identified with and relax in the knowing that there is no you. Only all. Awareness level, city. As many photons as there are in the universe is how many perspectives you have. You are all of them. The gene key system helps us explore the archetypes within us, understand the mechanisms they utilize to penetrate our reality through us, and rid ourselves of the need for them at all. Let's begin. The easiest way to study the gene key system is in order, one at a time. We're not going to do that, but we are still going to dive into them individually and get really into the origin code of each archetype. The suggested manner of approach is to get your personal hologenic profile divined. This is like an astrological horoscope reading. You discern from the math of your entry into this lifetime and the angles and degrees of your karmic imprint expressed through your personality. Only this system is a fun tree of life diagram of the genetic codes active in you based off of the progression of your conscious awareness. We aren't doing it that way either, but it's very enlightening to have this insight. Instead, we are going to go over it all and in probably far too much detail. We must be hungry for this knowledge. Ascension of consciousness is the journey, not just the goal. It's a slow growth process. It's a lifelong journey. It requires digestion. So as we consume, we must remember to take time and breathe and digest. It's a feast, but we don't have to finish it all at once. Okay. And then it's like nerdy stuff. I love nerdy stuff, but I love this book. Anyway, the amino acids, the principle of polarity. The coding of our body's most delicate functions are designed much like anything else in this mental universe of corresponding vibrational polarities moving in rhythm by a cause and effect and expressed outwardly in a gender-specific pulse. Yes, that was all the principles of natural law in one sentence. Good catch. Polarity and gender are similar but different concepts here. Polarity refers to the electromagnetic charge of the biology, whereas gender refers to the elemental nature of the spirit within the code. The gender would tell us whether the base trigram was water or thunder, and the polarity would tell us whether the amino acid side chain was setting up PR interviews with water-based molecules. This phenomenon is called hydrophilic, whereas the amino acids who are advised to steer clear of water molecules are what's called hydrophobic. Whether an amino acid is attracted to or repelled by water molecules determines its polarity. Polar amino acids have the capacity to be hydrophilic because they are outwardly capable of adapting their electromagnetic charge to accommodate the water's chemical elements. They can self-polarize. They have self-control, self-respect, and confidence in who they are. They aren't a rigid jerk who refuses to compromise or listen when you're talking. They're kind, patient, and adaptive. And for this reason, they get to be on the surface of the proteins they make to help them exchange ions, make friends, and explore their true potential. Okay, clearly I was going through some shit, like whatever. It is what it is. Still fits. Nonpolar amino acids are the neutral party. They don't take sides. They don't change their polarity in order to connect with water molecules. They are stubborn and rigid in their behavior and purpose. That's good, though, because they exist to balance the polar amino acids' reckless trust. They are about stability and integrity, keeping the shape and consistency of the protein. They do have to sit inside the protein, though, and just keep the house and decorate, while the polar amino acids get to go to work every day and make meaningful connections. That's the life they choose. They don't mind, though. They are introverts anyway, and they prefer to keep the protein stable. But fear not, for they do have a voice and can use it to communicate with others on the outside. Hydrophobic interactions are like mom video chats where we all have wine and whine to each other about how we want to run away from our kids and then congratulate each other for not having done so. And they help with the folding process of protein, so there's that. Acidic amino acids are always negatively charged. Basic amino acids are always positively charged. Aromatic amino acids are bipolar, or multiple personality really, as they contain cyclic aromatic side chains, which can decide whether to be polar or nonpolar depending on the need. And this might sound familiar to the polar amino acid story, but its application here is specifically tailored to light properties of the cellular structure of the body. This will come in handy later when we discuss the evolution of the body via the spiritual development of the mind as it chooses to raise its resonant frequency. Okay, amino acids. Where do babies come from? Essential amino acids, like most of the ones we're working with here, are obtained through diet. Not exclusively, but in order to meet production requirements, supplementation is needed, because animal nature was always meant to combine with the environment made to sustain it. Non-essential amino acids are the ones we can make ourselves utilizing ourselves only. These codes of amino acids are 3 letters in a sentence of RNA, which is interpreted and then sent out for production. These 3 letters are any combination of U, A, C, and G. They represent nucleobases, each with its own design and motive. The 4 nucleobases in DNA are guanine, adenine, cytosine, and thymine. But in RNA, uracil is used in place of thymine. A nucleobase starts out as just nitrogen. a single lonely monomer with the atomic number of 7 and a freezer full of meals for 1. Then the lucky bloke meets a 5-carbon sugar who rocks the boat and sleeps over every night. Now we are a couple. And then I, which was once a nucleobase, becomes a we, which is now called a nucleoside, because he finally has someone by his side. And the final step to any good pairing is a tripling. So just as nature intended, the nucleoside couple have a crazy third-party party, and now we're cooking with fire. Please welcome the phosphate side chick. Because it is of the body, an individual nucleotide is in the category of earthly element, and because earth is the transition into fire, the spark of the divine is always hidden within. Earthly element items have a quality of being relative in expression, outwardly echoing, to the 4 elements of air, water, fire, and earth. Air represented by adenine, water represented by cytosine, fire represented by guanine, and earth represented by uracil. Because earth is an extension of the heavens, the tiniest parts of the whole also carry the quality of being inwardly divisible by 3. This is the trigram origin of the I Ching applied to the genetic structure. The 3 core components of a nucleotide, as we just discovered, are a nitrogen base, daddy, a 5-carbon sugar, mommy, a phosphate side chick. Okay, guanine fire, definitely named after bird poop, true story. Crystalline structure, crystals in the body, sweet. High refraction index, this will be on the test. Found in land, sea, and air animals. Also found in meteorites, making it possibly of extraterrestrial origin. Pairs with cytosine, because they're BFFs. So that's guanine, fire. Adenine, air, also crystalline structure. Pairs with uracil, air and earth. Seldom found riding solo, clingy, codependent. Super important for cellular respiration, air quality of movement. Super into collaboration with others, cofactor habits. Name literally translates into gland because it was discovered in a pancreas. Previously known as vitamin B4. Step down for personal reasons. Cytosine represents water soluble. That's good to know. Kind of unstable, girl, same. Has a heterocyclic aromatic ring formation. Put a ring on it. Pairs with guanine. We just went over that, water, fire. Prone to spontaneous deanimation, flaky. When found third in a codon of RNA, cytosine is interchangeable with uracil. When found as the second base in the codon, the third is always interchangeable, no matter what it is. Okay, that's water, right? That's the power of water. Uracil, earth. Light absorption properties, ding, ding, ding. Pairs with adenine, air. Does the accepting and the donation of the pairing, so bossy. Is replaced by thymine in DNA translation, so casually, irresponsibly, is a weekend dad. Is self-recycling, handy. Also presumed to have originated extraterrestrially. Has the capacity to regulate enzyme action, cofactor stuff. Uses include metabolism, detoxification, and sugar transportation. Okay, so we went over amino acids, now we're going over the codons, right? We're going over codon rings. And because I'm such a nerd, I had to do like a Tolkien Lord of the Rings, like just whatever. Here it is. I love it. I'm a nerd. I love it. This is whatever. You're going to love it. It's great. Okay, so Lords of the Codon Rings. 3 rings for the elven kings under the sky. 7 for the dwarf lords in their halls of stone. 9 for mortal men doomed to die. 1 for the dark lord on his dark throne. In the land of Mordor where the shadows lie. 1 ring to rule them all. 1 ring to find them. 1 ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them. In the land of Mordor where the shadows lie. Okay, there's actually 21 codon rings, but the first one is for the Silmarils, so it was in the prequel. In this study, we will act as though the rings of power are made of all the genetic codes which create proteins within the body. Each amino acid thus created is the power behind the ring. The elemental ring bearer will represent my lack of nerd self-control. Seriously, my nerdiness is the main contributing factor to about 75% of why this book is so long. Sorry, not sorry. Yeah, I actually wrote that. That happened. Okay, so then there's another chart, because I love charts, right? So it's like, and I did too, like I numbered, I took all the rings, the codon rings, and like I signed them, like whether it was elves that carried that ring or men or dwarves or like, because I'm a nerd. But essentially, there's 64 gene keys, 64 possibilities, patterns, and then I Ching is 64 symbols too. And there's, each of them makes a certain amino acid, right? And all the ones that make the same amino acid are in a group called a ring. And I didn't make that up, okay? That was Richard Red did that, okay? But also Tolkien, and they told us, they warned us we were ready. But yeah, so I made a chart, and it's glorious. My glorious chart. Boom. So like it just lists all the ring, the name of the ring, the amino acid it produces, the gene keys that all produce that one amino acid, the coding, the genetic coding for each of these, and then whether men, dwarves, or Bilbo and Frodo carried that ring, because that's the nerd that I am, and I love it. So anyway, my chart is glorious, and you're welcome. Okay, now that we have met the actors, let's introduce ourselves to the codons they play together. This is the fun part. A codon is a collection of 3 of these nucleobase letters. For instance, if uracil, earth, adenine, air, and cytosine, water, all go on stage in that order. The codon is UAC, earth, air, water, or 010. The trigram con, water, flowing, communicating. That translates as the amino acid protein tyrosine. Tyrosine is a hydrophobic amino acid that has many uses, the most interesting of which being its capacity for photosynthesis. Each protein is a lord of a ring. That is to say, all of the codon combinations of nucleobases which could possibly form that protein are part of the fellowship of that ring. Tyrosine is the lord of the ring of no return in the gene key system. The other codon in that ring is UAU, earth, air, earth, which also is represented by the trigram con, or water, flowing and communicating, which means that uracil, 0, or earth, had a line, and then adenine, 1, or air, responded, and uracil closed it out with the last line. In this scene, tyrosine is summoned. If that's not enough to have to process, there's more. Remember the I Ching stuff from earlier? Well, it's cue to go on stages right about now. But first, a preview of the pathway, by which I mean the epic journey through the misty mountains and in and out of weeks into the bedroom where Max could still smell his supper and it was still warm. It's a ridiculous amount of data to compare and contrast from lots of different cultures, but it's all part of the web, and we are spiders after all. So then I go into like break down the gene keys, right? Like individually, and it's so much data. Okay, so 31st gene key, the hexagram is conjoining, or Jean. Trigram is lake above, mountain below. The codon ring is the ring of no return. Amino acid is tyrosine. Physiology is throat or thyroid. Programming partner is a whole nother thing I haven't even gotten into yet. Programming partner is the 41st gene key. Hippocratic temperament is phlegmatic, earth. I'll get into why that's important. Tetragrammaton is it's a second hay number, so it's earth and fire. It's hay and yod. Its auric focus is language, influence. Chakra is the Vishuddha, and then the wavelengths, the frequencies. So the shadow, the lowest frequency of this idea or energy is arrogance, and then the gift frequency is leadership. So it's the same energy, just at different frequencies. Arrogance, leadership, and then humility. And then, yeah. It's a lot. It's a lot. I'm not going to go over them individually now. I'm just like, this is where I'm at introducing the gene keys into shadow work in the book. And it's a work in progress. And I love it. It's fun. But it's going to take a minute. It's going to take a good minute. Anyway, thanks for listening.